Hi everyone, it's Jung here. I made 3 cards for the Spellbinders blog, and today I'm going to be showing you how I made this whale card. I'm using the Hello Summer Starry Night project kit from Spellbinders, and you get everything pictured here in this kit. So to begin, I always like to stamp out my images, and I'm also stamping out some images from the Space Cadet stamp set. And I like to stamp multiples in case I want to make more cards or in case I mess up. I will set those stamped images aside, and then I'm going to work on my background because I want my background to have enough time to dry. So I have already stamped the moon image, which is from the Dream Seeker stamp set included in the kit with Versamark ink, and I'm going to heat set it with white embossing powder. Once the image cools down, I'm going to start ink blending with my Distress inks and my ink blending tools. I am using that piece of purple tape to keep my fingers clean and to keep the fingerprints out of the Distress ink. That is a trick that I learned by watching Christina Warner's videos. Around the moon, I use the Distress ink color in Squeeze Lemonade. And then I'm going to put a light layer of blue down, and this is one of my favorite colors. It's Tumbled Glass. And then next, I'm putting down a layer of Salty Ocean. Next, I'm going to be going in with a layer of Chipped Sapphire. And then I'm going to be going in with Black Soot. After I finish blending the black soot at the top, I will be going back with all the blue colors and reblending over the lines just to make sure I have a smooth blend and that I don't have any harsh lines. Okay, so here's where it's going to begin to look like a night sky. I'm going to use this Dr. P.H. Martin's Pen White, and I'm going to water it down just a tiny bit because I still want that white opacity. And I'm just going to use a tiny paintbrush and flick it all over my panel, and that'll make it look like stars. I really love how this looks. And just to give my stars a little variety, have a few bigger stars, I'm going to use my paintbrush again and paint some bigger stars on there. Okay, so on another white sheet of cardstock, I'm going to be working on the ocean part of the panel. I actually messed this one up right before I needed to use it, so I end up redoing it, and I chose slightly different colors. But I'm going to leave this clip in because I wanted you to see how I made it. And on this particular panel, if you're interested, the colors are Cracked Pistachio, Mermaid Lagoon, and Chipped Sapphire. And once we get to the other panel that I made, I'll go ahead and tell you what colors I used for that one. So I just used those 3 colors and ink blended it, and since it is a watery scene and I wanted it to look like kind of bubbles, so I'm going to spray it with my Distress water bottle sprayer, and then I'm going to use a paper towel to soak up the water, and it creates kind of a bleaching effect. Okay, I'm going to push those background panels aside to fully dry, and then I'm going to work on coloring my whale image. I'm going to be using my Copic markers, and mostly I'm going to be using the cool grays, but I do put in a couple of warm gray tones in there, and a pink for the rosy cheeks. I know whales don't have rosy cheeks, but it's just cute. Here are the Copic marker colors that I'm using. I know it's quite a bit for just one whale image, but since I'm just coloring one image, I don't mind taking the time to really blend and add shadows, but you probably would be fine just using 2 or 3 marker colors. I'm not really worried about coloring outside the lines because I already know I'm going to fussy cut the whale, so that's why you see me kind of just messily coloring. It takes me a really long time to color with Copic images, but it's one of my favorite mediums to use. I'm really comfortable with it, and so that's usually what I gravitate towards. I usually start off with my lightest color. In this case, it was C1, and then I'll go in with my mid-tone color And then I'll add in my deep tones, the shadows, and I always try and keep in mind where my highlights are going to be, where my shadows are going to be. And you want some contrast to your image, so I try and keep that in mind. For me to get the best blend out of my Copic markers, I have to go back and forth with more layers. Once you add your deep tones, you have that harsh line, so you need your mid-tone color to kind of blend it out. And then by the time you do that, the deep tone is not as deep anymore, so then you have to go back. And so it's just a back and forth, layer after layer, just to get the best shading and blend possible. I worked a bit longer on this whale than I normally would, only because it's so monotone where I'm only using one color essentially. And so it's hard to create contrast with colors, and so I'm just trying to do that with the different tones of grays. And so yeah, I definitely spent some time on this one. One way that I like to add contrast and interest to my Copic colored images is to add dots. When I took some art classes a long time ago, I believe this was called stippling. And so I'm just going to add dots in various sizes, and I create them by the pressure that I'm using on the marker. So if I push down harder, it's going to create a bigger dot. If I push down really lightly, it'll create a smaller dot. And so I'm just going to add some dots to these shadowed areas. And for the well image, I'm also going to use a white gel pen to add some dots too. I think it looks really good. It kind of gives it a barnacle-y, is that a word? Barnacle kind of look. Okay, so I'm just going to fussy cut my well image, and I'll go ahead and finish that off camera. Alright, so this well image was really easy to fussy cut, and here she is. One tip that I've learned when fussy cutting to create a more finished edge is to color the edge with the side of a black marker, and that's what I'm doing here. And I hope you can see what I mean. But I find that it definitely creates a more finished, polished look. So I started to trim down my background panels, but when I saw how much of the sky I would have to cut off, I decided to make a 5x7 sized card instead. I really love the sky, how it turned out, and so I didn't want to have to cut off more than I had to. Now I'm just trimming down the ocean panel to be 5x7 sized as well. I'm going to use a stencil to create a more ethereal look on my ocean panel. As I mentioned in the beginning, I end up messing this panel up, so I have to re-ink another one, and the colors I chose this time around is just Mermaid Lagoon and Chip Sapphire. So this is a trick that I like to do when I can't decide which sentiment I want to use and I don't want to mess up my panel. So I'll stamp it out on a piece of packaging or acetate. I knew I wanted to heat set the sentiment with white embossing powder, so I just used some pigment ink on the acetate to get a feel of which sentiment I wanted to use and where I want to place it. Okay, so I'm going to pull out my Stamp-A-Magic tool. I haven't used this tool in quite a while. I'm so used to just using my Misty stamp positioning tool, but with rubber stamps, it's sometimes harder to get things down exactly since you can't see through it. So what you do is you stamp your image on that plastic piece provided, and you have to make sure that it's tucked into that corner. And that piece of orange scrap is just so you could see what I was doing. And then you move that plastic piece, since it's see-through, on your background so you can place the stamp exactly where you want it. And hopefully by watching, it'll make more sense. So then you line that tool right back up to where you want it. And then you line the edge of your acrylic block next to that little corner, and then it will stamp in the right spot. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, now I'm just going to go ahead and heat emboss that white embossing powder. I want to make sure my heat tool is good and hot before I start. Now I'm ready to start putting my card together. There's my white 5x7 card panel that I made. And now I'm just going to use some fun foam to pop up my background pieces. I trimmed down the sky and the ocean panel slightly shorter or slightly smaller than 5x7, so there will be a white border, and you'll be able to see that once I put it together. Okay, so now it's time to add my whale to the card, and I'm going to use some foam tape for that as well. And I want to add a little extra interest, so I'm going to use my glitter brush pen, and I'm going to use that to color over the moon. It's hard to tell on camera, but it leaves a really clear, beautiful, sparkly finish. And I also don't show this on camera, but I also go over those little stenciled light rays coming through the ocean water. I use my glitter pen then as well. And now I'm going to use some of the sequins that come in the kit and just add a little final touch. And here's my card finished. I hope you can see all the extra detail and dimension I put into it. And if you stay tuned, I'll show you the other cards I made as well. I made a shaker card. Once I saw all the sequins, I couldn't help myself. They're some of my favorite cards to make. The sentiment is the same one I used for the whale card. And I also used the stencil along with Nouveau Crystal paste for the background. And I love the variety of sequins that you get in this little jar. For my next card, I made an action wobble card. You can see that there's a little plastic spring behind this spaceship. And that little robot spaceship, I did a little bit of masking stamping, and it's from the Space Cadet stamp set. I also use this background stamp in white heat embossing over my Galaxy panel. To get my edges that deep black color, I use that FSJ black licorice paint. And then I also added a few of these acrylic shapes that's from the Space Glow sticker pack. And here come my close-up photos. I hope you learned a few tips and tricks from watching my video. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. Don't forget to check out the Spellbinders website for the Hello Summer Starry Night project kit and all the other goodies that I've showed in my video today. I will leave all kinds of links in my info bar below. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Bye.